Welcome to the Think Like, an engineer podcast where we discuss how to navigate life with the mindset of an engineer with your host, Ibukun Adeni.
Okay, so introduce yourself now. Let everybody here know you personally. Like, what have you done? What have you been doing in the last 10 years of your life?
Okay, well, my name is Babajide Fowotade. I'm an engineering manager and, software engineering consultant. I pretty much started my career from I think 7 years ago. That's 7, 8 years ago with ErrandLR.
Feels longer.
Feels longer, right?
It feels like 10 years.
I think so. It's possible. From ErrandLR that, worked with companies in the Middle East. I think one was Qatar, then another was Dubai. Then from there to the US, worked with some companies in the AI industry, education sector, pretty much different sectors. Currently now, I've moved beyond just being a software engineer writing code to being more like an engineer, hiring other software engineers, mentoring software engineers, defining processes for companies. And I'm only pulled into writing code and architectural decisions when there's something important to do. Aside that, I am also the CEO of ErrandLR, where we are trying to build this technology to facilitate delivery processes in Nigeria. There is a problem involved, and I realized there's a way to solve it with technology and then a good business person. So so far that's my part to in my career, and that's
So
what
how
I've
did
been
you
up
get
to.
into tech? Why are you not a farmer? How did you get into...
Interesting stuff. I wanted to be a biochemical engineer. That's what I applied to university. But at some point when I got the admission, my sisters told me, "Oh, we picked computer science for you." So I didn't even pick computer science by myself. It was my sister and my mom's decision. So they picked that, but I went to Ladoke Akitola University, and when I got in, they gave me a different course, agronomy, agric.
what happened to the computer science?
And they didn't give me computer science. They gave me agronomy, but I got into the school. So I was studying agric for first 1 year, going to farm in Oyo State. But afterwards, there's a window that they give you in universities where you can now apply to move to a different department. So at that point, I was able to move to computer science.
Okay.
So that's it. Even though back then, because of the education system in Nigeria, whatever I learned in school was not relevant, right? So after I got out of school, I had to start all over again. I applied for courses online. I did Harvard computer science related courses. So that way I was able to advance my skills technically, able to understand how things work in the real world at a higher level beyond just the African sense of how tech works. So that's how
And
it was.
so then you got into ErrandLR. At what point?
At what point did I get into ErrandLR?
Yeah, how did you transition from learning from home to getting into ErrandLR?
So before I finished school, I think before I even went for NYC, before I finished school, I heard about ErrandLR through a friend. His name is also Jide. He got into ErrandLR, then he told us about it. Then we kind of applied. I and some other friends applied to ErrandLR. So luckily, I got in, or I got a mail that I passed their test. So there was that window to wait for you to know, to come for the next interview. So it was during that period I started learning some things on programming before I actually got into ErrandLR. So by the time I finished all those final year graduation things, I was already working with ErrandLR. So during my NYC, I was working with ErrandLR. I was learning new things as well. So it was during all that ErrandLR period I went to study the whole Harvard courses and things like that while being in ErrandLR.
So your career as a programmer, would you say that the most significant learning process was at ErrandLR?
Yes, it was.
Where you learned like
Yeah, exactly. Because at ErrandLR, it's a community of other engineers that are learning, that are also hungry for knowledge. So being in that community, it's like a challenge, right? It feels like there's some sort of competition. When you're in class and then you're like 12 and you don't want to carry last. So everybody's studying day and night to be good at what they are doing, right? Because the next day you want to be able to talk and be like, oh, I studied something in JavaScript. This is what I learned. So you want to, you don't want to carry last and be like you don't know anything. So that was kind of like the motivation for all of us at ErrandLR, because there was this community, everybody's learning, smart people around, you want to match up. So definitely ErrandLR was like this big push.
It seems like ErrandLR doesn't even run that business model anymore today.
No, they don't.
They don't they don't have that community like they used to back in the day.
No, I think now they're like fully remote and they don't hire people that are still learning. That's what I know. I don't know.
But I know that majority of the top engineers in Nigeria now are like went to ErrandLR at one point.
Yeah.
or the other.
Yeah. Some of them even run companies, fintech companies that I know that have raised money. So a lot of engineers have passed through ErrandLR that are doing pretty well.
Yeah, there are very only few people that didn't go through ErrandLR. And the truth is that even me, I started Hack Academy because of ErrandLR.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, like how we met, you said you can't even remember, but we met when I started learning programming. I was a web designer. I used to do all these like websites and all those things. So I knew HTML and CSS, and I used to go up and down to different stores, build websites for them. That's how I was surviving.
Mm-hmm.
Then I met one girl from America, and I now saw Uber. She came from America and had like the Uber app, and I saw Uber, the thing, and I started reading about it. It just opened my mind. And I started reading about ErrandLR and, so I was just somehow in the midst of all this information that was going around at that time. I just started, I wanted to first go to America. I wanted to go to one place in America called Dev Bootcamp.
Mm-hmm.
Dev Bootcamp, yeah. It was like maybe 6 months coding bootcamp, but I didn't get the visa. Right, so I now vexed. I was so angry after passing, because before you can even get into admission into that dev bootcamp, it's like ErrandLR, you have to write the exam. So I had to study for like 2-3 months to be able to even pass the exam. I finally passed the exam. I did not get the visa. I just vexed. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go and learn this program by myself. Then I met you in free code camps online forum. As that time, now a lot of Nigerians are on free code camp, thousands and thousands. Yeah. But then I just saw Niger name like this. I said, and that's how we started Niger. Niger. Who is Niger boy for this place? Who is Niger boy for this kind of place? Then we now started chatting and everything. Then we now started a company together, Booker.
Yeah.
They now ran away. Let me report this boy. This boy, he got a job, his first job, abandoned me.
I don't understand.
You abandoned me. You abandoned me.
You want to use work Akimi now?
You abandoned me for $20. What was your first job like? Why did you even abandon me? Tell me, what was the first job like?
Well, the thing is, as engineers back even now, when you get the first job, there's that, it's like a heat period or probation period where you need to be able to match up to expectations, right? So it's like, for me, it's generally like 3-4 months. I like to, when I join a new company, I give myself 3-4 months to be able to prove to this company that, look, you've hired like, what you're expecting. That during that 3-4 months, I've been able to learn about the company's processes, the company's business, code structure, architecture, etc. After that period, I now begin to relax because I understand how things work and I can quickly resolve whatever issues or things faster than it would have been in the first 3 months, right? So that period, I like to give every other thing gap, like just space. Like, let me just focus on this one thing. After that period, I want to be able to attend to other things better. So I think that's pretty much the same thing too with other engineers. Pretty much other engineers. I don't know.
Like when you get into a new company, the first
you want to
impress.
Yeah,
is it hard when you get into the company? Do you hit the ground coding at the first day?
There usually is that onboarding stage. Right.
What's that like?
You probably don't write code. They just give you this is how we do things. This is who you communicate with. You might not, some companies might not even introduce you to the code base till probably after 2 weeks of your, other onboarding, like you have a new laptop, security, learning about emails, phishing, security, different things, administrative, non-technical.
Yeah.
So after that period, you get introduced to the code base. Now, code base is, depending on how old a company is, that's like, the type of monster you face, right? If a company like Stripe hires you, Stripe has been around for many years, the code base you would fall into, unless they're starting a new feature project and they're just like, okay, lucky you're starting with a new project, then you can easily just pick up things. But if they throw you to an already existing project, it's alhamdulillah, because you will sit down, go through the shit ton of files, try to understand how things are connected, right? And I bet you 1 month you probably haven't figured out everything. You'll still be making mistakes. And then they have, aside the coding process, there is something called the CI/CD, where it's like deployments, how you interact with their infrastructure. There's that piece where they tell you, okay, for code reviews, pull requests, this is how the process works. So there's usually a lot around that onboarding period, 2 weeks to a month. Some companies do a month of onboarding before they say your first task is to add a semicolon and push that. Like they give you like a really small thing, because they understand when you're joining the project, it's very overwhelming.
Yes.
And lots of meetings and all of those things. So before you now get familiar with everyone, before you get comfortable, it's probably like 3-4 months of being at that company.
Now back to, I want to find out a little more about like the learning process in ErrandLR, right? From my own experience coding, I feel like learning by yourself has always been like, I don't advise anybody to go to like a school. Like I always feel like the most like what you said, the best way to learn is from community. It's from having somebody to talk to, somebody to do some, like that, just a small community that, and that will drive your interest and drive you to learn more, because like there's so much stuff that you can learn in programming that you can even be learning for 2 years and not even get anywhere. So if, like if you don't know where, you can easily get lost in what they call tutorial hell. Yeah. So like in your experience with ErrandLR, what was the learning process like? Were you guys doing classes? Or what were the classes like, if you did classes? Or what, in all the learning processes, in everything, what was the most effective way? What would you say is the most effective way to learn as a programmer, from your own experience?
Okay. So starting from the ErrandLR process, right? there was this guide to, first of all, they split people in tech stack, right? Some people learning JavaScript, some people learning Python, Ruby. So for those different sets of people learning different programming languages, there are like guidelines to, okay, these are the things you need to learn for this programming language.
Like a curriculum.
Yeah, curriculum. So that kind of helped every engineer to know what to study.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. Compared to when I started learning programming, I think it was during my IT days, I was going through a shit ton of tutorials on the internet, right? So I picked up a lot of junk, irrelevant things that are just really useless. But when joining ErrandLR, you'll be like, oh, this thing I learned is useless, or this is old school. It's no longer being used, right? So that's the good thing, being at ErrandLR. And then having the community is like you're all learning together. And then we had this, we used to do code challenges where you have to solve problems, right? Technically, it just helps your brain stay sharp, be able to solve problems, technical problems. What was the other question?
Like, do you do classes? Was there like Blackboard?
I wouldn't say they're like classes. We had like mentors, right?
Okay.
So they would, today being separated entities would be like, okay, this set of people, you would build something similar to, for example, say Facebook, right? Or you guys pick a topic or pick some software you want to build, right? So then by being separated into different teams, and then we start building different, different products. And right.
One question, from my understanding of ErrandLR, I used to remember that they should pay you guys, right?
Yeah, we got paid.
Even while you were learning?
Yes.
What did that help?
It did. It's a motivation. You're learning and you're getting paid
without doing any work.
without doing any work.
Those guys tried.
After a period, exactly, people are not loyal. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, I'm learning and I'm getting paid." It started the point where issues started happening is we started getting outsourced to clients, and then I think some information then leaked about how much these companies are paying for you to be outsourced. So the salary was not matching well enough, so people started getting greedy. Let's go to the source. No more middleman. Let's go to the source. So it was at that point, ErrandLR started having problems. Like, people would just come, get the knowledge, and
jackpot.
Straight up.
I know that one is normal human. That one is normal. So, but what were they paying at the time?
At the time, it depends on your rank. So based on rank. So say you just join in, it was like 70K. Yeah, and you get a laptop, get every other thing that you needed, like that will help you work. Then I think the highest so far back then was around 300K. That I know the highest rank was around 300K.
And what was the pay from like maybe your first remote job?
My own first remote job.
Yeah.
I think at the time it really depends on the dollar rate. I know when I had my first job, I was still earning around 70K or 100K. But when I had my first remote job, I was earning around 1 million. Many years.
In dollars. That would be like maybe 3 million today. I like 3 million like that today.
So yeah. And so now imagine like once, and then you have other friends in ErrandLR. When you tell them your salary, they'll be like,
what should they do?
Let's go.
So okay. So now a lot of people are now into remote jobs. Like in fact, almost everybody now in Nigeria now, like if you're not even looking at a remote job, like it's like you're not serious.
Yeah.
So how would you advise that somebody that doesn't have experience and wants to get into this industry? Do you get, there are two things. There are some people that are skeptical about tech. All the grammar you spoke on now. Like, there are so many things that you said that I understand that.
True.
I just look say people cannot understand this. People can never understand, pull request. Something as simple as pull request.
True.
But a normal person cannot understand what you're saying. Like, so is it that if I'm not technically sound, I can't get a remote job? But there, how does somebody, a normal Niger person that is just looking that, oh man, if I can get a job of 1 million naira, I've made it. How does that person get into the game?
Well, that's an interesting question. There is a lot. Like, you don't have to be an engineer to, have a remote job. There is, you can be a lawyer for a tech company. All you just need to know is like understand the laws and regulations that govern tech around in different countries, and you'll find a job, right?
From your own experience, like from your own friends and community and people around you, how would you ratio it? Like, what do most of them do? Are most of them engineers? Is it like 90% engineers, 10% project managers, or 5% lawyers, or what's it like?
I think the analysis you've just given is somewhat correct.
90% engineers.
80%.
80%
Let me say
engineers.
80% engineers.
Okay.
I have friends that are product managers.
But very few.
Yeah, very few. But then they have remote jobs, right? So they're making money.
Yeah.
I have lawyer friends too that are in tech that are also working remotely. So there is pretty much everything, every job that currently runs in Lagos or anywhere can, you can get a remote job. It's just all about finding that job.
Now, right? Being an engineer, do you think anybody can become an engineer?
Yes, sure. At ErrandLR, there were people that came from zoology, chemical engineer. One of my very close friends.
About non-science. His name all those are sciences. About non-science.
Non-science, zoology. Okay, well, zoology is science-ish, but zoo-ish. But I mean, I heard my sister came from okay, economics. She did a little bit of maths and stuff, but then now she's a data scientist, right? Like there are people who come from really weird backgrounds. The thing is, once you just enter that tech, you'll forget every other thing that that you've learned, and just it's like brand new education, right? Anybody can go into tech as long as you're dedicated to it, as long as you have the time. For men, it's easy. For women, I don't know. So,
how long would you say that it would take, me, a graduate of economics, to go? Or let me even make it more tricky. 45-year-old man that has been working somewhere in one company that wants to change career, but maybe 45-year-old lawyer that wants to go into tech. How long do you think it would take that kind of person?
He just dedicate like about a year of his life to learning, right? Because you need to spend at least the first 6 months knowing about these technologies, having a full grasp, and then the other 6 months is building out small projects, because the more you practice, the better you get, right? So I usually say a year of practice, even though I spent like at most 2-3 years of constant practicing before I got better at what I do. But nowadays there's better resources. Most of these tools have been developed in such a way that you can easily learn them very fast. Compared to back then, you have to write a lot of code to achieve a very small thing. But now you write small thing and achieve like good results. So to learn is very easy now, but experience is what matters, right? So companies want to hire people with experience. So when you're learning, you need to be at least really good so that people don't really want to start managing, engineers, because it's very difficult to start teaching someone like, oh, you made a mistake. People don't really have that much time as companies. They want to move really fast, right? So as a junior engineer, you have to be really good. You have to show that you're smart, right? That way you can easily get a job somewhere. Maybe you start from as an intern, and then you slowly build yourself all the way to intermediate level, senior level, expert level.
Yeah.
That's how it is. So age doesn't really matter. I've seen stories where people are like men in their 60s, they're just learning and they're getting jobs at Amazon, as software engineers.
Because I even feel like the more life experience you have, the better you can even be as an engineer in some sort. Because I've trained a 60-something-year-old man, and he was moving really fast. It was because it's one thing to understand the technology, it's another thing to like really be able to apply it into like situations, to be able to come up with algorithms. And those ones are, to be able to come up with an algorithm, I feel like is innate, is something that is not, you can't really teach somebody. You can practice that you'll be faster, you can do a lot of code challenges and all that, but many of those code challenges don't account for like the algorithms you have to come up with in the field, right? If you want to if you're working with a company that has to figure out like maybe a process of something to work, there has to be like a sense of like life experience, that can help you to figure out, a problem solving, which I think like, problem solving skills comes naturally with, it's not, I think programming just helps you bring it out. Programming just makes so many things that are your brain is like a scattered room before you learn programming.
Exactly.
It's when you learn programming that you now know that, these are books. Okay, they should be here.
You'll be able to arrange it.
You'll not be able to arrange it. These are the so you'll be sorting out your own brain. Your brain will be getting, you will really understand how your own personal brain works. So I think the older you are, the more you should even learn programming, because you'll be surprised you may not even go into programming. You may not even end up being a programmer. You may just take that new skill and go back into what you were doing before,
make it better. Exactly.
With processes, with processing, with so that's one of the things that I feel like is really good. Now, I want to ask you another question. Like in the past, now I've had students that there was one guy. The guy, I think it was even Andela. He was trying to get into Andela, but he never got in, right? And this guy, he knows how to code, right? He knows how to code. Like he's very geeky. He likes to feel like he knows how to code, But even when he came to work with me, I was always having problems with him, in the sense that like it's almost like he knows too much. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's almost like he knew, like it was just always a mess, whereas somebody that was maybe not as technically sound as him. When I say technically sound, I'm talking about, okay, he knows all the syntax, he knows all the everything, he knows all the, but on the field, like when it comes to actually doing a project, he can never do anything well. Do you understand? He could, so I was always wondering, like, what causes that? Why is it that sometimes an average programmer may seem better, might be a better employee than even somebody that feels like a professor or jigger? Why? Do you have any experience with that? Why?
I think that's more of like a personal thing for the engineer, for that person, right? Generally, as an engineer, there's one thing we always talk about: communication and open to feedback, right? Everyone should be open to feedback. You should never feel like you know everything, because you can never know everything. A very young boy who's just starting programming can just come and teach you about something you never knew all your life, right? So that's his problem, right? I mean, there are many other people like that who just don't welcome feedback, who are not open to listening. And what makes a great engineer, it's being able to listen to feedback, process it, and being able to apply it to make a company better, reach its goals, right? Now, the young average engineers, they know like they're learning, right? They don't have a choice but to listen because they want to be better. But the senior ones, maybe the proud ones, are like, I know this, don't tell me what to do. For someone like me, I'm not like that. I like to listen because I found myself in situations whereby I've worked with young engineers and I tell them, this probably is not the right way to do it. And then they'll just go to Stack Overflow, send me a link, and I'll be like, thank you.
Just to break it down, Stack Overflow is a website where you can people put all existing code.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the future of programming. Me now, like I always feel like I love business. I've never been able to like extendedly do a programming job, right? Because I've never just been that kind of person. You get? Everybody's personality is different, but I love being a programmer. If I don't code for like 6 months, I like to go back and code small. You get? Just to know about it, because of what it does to like me personally. It's like one drug that I can't stop taking. So. But now, as the world is moving forward, we are seeing like artificial intelligence and all these things. Is it now? Some people are saying that, I'm one of those people that are saying that, in maybe 3 years, like programming is going to be like, maybe it's not going to be as big as, like the industry is going to change. Like computers will be able to program themselves, right? Which we're already seeing some of, right? What do you think? Do you think it's going to get to that day? And if we say 3 years now, somebody that just wants to learn programming today is now looking like, if I stress myself learning this thing, are you saying that I only have 2-year career? Are you saying I only have 2 years of programming? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you get? What are the chances of that happening? And if it happens, is it that there are going to be creation of new jobs? What may I find most of the time is that when one job goes obsolete, new ones are created. Is that going to be the case? Or, what do you think?
I mean, that's most likely going to be the case, as you've said. When one closes, another is definitely going to open. It's just like, technically, when one programming language is becoming obsolete, another new one is coming. And then they're now looking for engineers
in that
new tech stack, right? So, but in 3 years, no, it's going to take a much longer time, because in the tech community, it's things like, AI being able to write code for people. Like there is this, GitHub, where there's open source code, lots that people have written. GitHub kind of like, does some I'll just call it magic, that gathers everyone's code and tries to autocomplete code for you when you're writing. There's going to be legal issues around that. There's going to be syntax issues, like, the code won't probably write the code so well for you, because it will just write the basic things like if and else. But before the AI will begin to understand business logic, in terms of like, you want it to act the way you want it to act, like, this is the way I'm thinking and I want it to write it that way, it's going to take a long time for the code to even figure it out. A really long time. GitHub has to do lots of iteration for it to now say your AI can actually write code according to your thinking, right?
So what's your own doomsday estimate? 10 years?
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
Okay. So the time day.
Yeah, it's going to be that time. Yeah, so 10 years, it's going to be, hopefully it can work. But then I think, people will still prefer to hire engineers, because it might take a while for you to fully trust just AI writing the code, because you actually want to know what the AI is doing, right? Before your AI will just go and put something in your own business, like will just take over your business, right? And then there's also testing in place. Like, you will need engineers to also write tests for the code.
Okay, so engineers are always going to still be relevant.
Always going to be
and engineers will still have to be the ones that will even teach the AI and
exactly
the AI what to do.
Exactly. So
jobs, I guess you're right.
Jobs will still always be there.
Okay. So now, what do you think about the Niger local market? Do you get now, as CEO of ErrandLR, first of all, as CEO of ErrandLR, building a tech solution in Nigeria and being chief engineer in some foreign company and all that, what's the difference? Like, what has been the difference from like working on building solutions for like foreign companies and building solutions in your own home country?
Do you mean building solutions for my own personal company or working with Nigerian companies?
No, you're building for your own company, ErrandLR, right?
Yeah.
And you've also built for foreign companies, right? In the UAE.
Yeah.
What's the experience like? What's the difference? Do you get? How do you assess the Nigerian market? Do you think there's a future or there's no future, or what do you think is going on? Like looking at, I can remember there was one time we had a conversation that you're telling me of one solution that you were working on that had millions of users, right? To build a solution in Nigeria that will get to the point of millions of users, like, it's not easy. Do you get, like, so from that experience of the foreign experience and the local experience, what do you think is going to happen in the Nigerian tech ecosystem in the future? Do you think there is growing? What do you think it needs to be able to grow? Do you get to the point where Nigerian companies can pay developers $5,000, $10,000, whatever? What do you think needs to happen in Nigeria?
And that's an interesting question that it covers a lot of areas. First of all, is the economy, right? We have, for you to say a Nigerian company should be able to pay a developer, a Nigerian tech company should be able to pay a developer in dollars. We first have to look at the conversion rate.
No, you get my point. I mean, like, pay them a lot, Sha.
Okay,
let's say like
okay, pay them a lot. I mean, it's possible, right? Because you just have to get your company to that extent that is being used by a lot of people, right? There are some fintech companies that already have a shit ton of users. Banks right now, they are entering tech. They have that number, right? So
how about other sectors?
There are
e-commerce.
So the thing is, e-commerce
education,
can get there, right? Jumia was there, right? But it still feels like Jumia hasn't figured out their
why is it that there's so many, like, I've seen so many people come up with so many innovative solutions in Nigeria that startup that can help you do this, do that, and it's like people are not using it.
Yeah, that's technology adoption. Nigeria is still like, before they can use this, they're already used to something. Nigeria is still at that stage whereby people are still trying to get used to technology. When I say people, not us that we are using Instagram and, we are already used to TikTok, we can make all those things, but those people that are still on Facebook. So there's still that technology adoption that before you tell someone, hey, there's a new app that can do this for you, you have to convince them, right? Like, you have to convince them, like, okay, why should I stop calling somebody? Why should I use an app instead? There's a lot of things that you need to do. You have to spend money. You have to, give them gifts or something to just bribe them into using your system. So there's a lot to do for you to convince people to use your product, right?
Okay, how about a situation like something like Pinterest, right? Why isn't there? If you go on Pinterest now, you see mostly foreign content, but there are a lot of Nigerians on Pinterest, but Nigerians are not creating content on Pinterest, right? Why? How do you think? Why is there no Nigerian Pinterest? Even though Nigerians use Pinterest, do you get it? Why is there no Nigerian social media platform? Even though a lot of because in a lot of other countries, they have their own. They have Instagram, they have all this, but they will have one local. Do you get?
Yeah.
One local technology or one local. I know the only thing that I know that we used to have a Roku TV, but I know he has sold it. Do you get? I know it's been sold, but Roku TV did not even scale well in Nigeria.
Yeah.
It scaled for Nigerians in diaspora.
Yeah.
So why is it that even technologies that we use a lot here, do you get? Why is it that? Is it a technical issue? Is it because is it a manpower issue? Do you get? Is it that, okay, Nigerian entrepreneurs don't have what it takes to be able to build? Is that we need more funding?
Yeah.
So sometimes I wonder that, imagine if I be just one solo founder like Mark Zuckerberg for university. Just like, what would happen? Do you get? Is it possible? What's the? Do you get? Like, so who is going to put in enough? I'm in our process with Errand now. It's a learning process for me. I want to estimate that, okay, for every industry, it's going to take X amount of time to understand and build the solution. So let's say that mark for us is 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. So I can now be able to advertise it that, okay, if you are building a startup in Nigeria, it will take you 2 years. This, at least there's a roadmap to follow. And I think maybe that's why a lot of people might even be waiting for a lot of engineers and whatever.
To see
somebody that would do it successfully.
I mean, there's Flutterwave Paystack.
Fintech is like Ojoro for me, because fintech is built on an existing industry. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like the financial sector in Nigeria is bam. Do you guys? It's like saying you build a solution for a tech solution for like telcos. Do you get? For like maybe MTN and Airtel and co. Do you understand? Is if you build a solution for those companies, it's plug and play, because they are big. They've solved, those ones have solved all the problem in their space. The banks have solved all the problem in their space. They have the customers, they have everything. So if you build a solution on top of the financial institution, do you get? So like, we already have financial institution, you're now building online payments. You're not going to worry how the money is being deposited, how it's credited, how it's being withdrawn. Do you understand? Like, you're not dealing with so many things. Yours is just to say, okay, all this infrastructure, you want to build an API that can be able to do it online. So it's easy. So fintech for me is like Ojoro. Do you get? It's not a, I don't
consumer,
believe, I don't believe it's a true way to measure the growth of technology in the Nigerian market. Did you get? In like the Nigerian consumer market, I feel like there are so many other things. Like Nigeria has so many problems. Do you get? Like, and technology can solve all these problems. Everything from transportation, from mass transit to waste management to real estate to lifestyle, like name it, entertainment. Hey, there's so much to be done, right? And it's going to take like a conglomerate of solutions, a conglomerate of different tech companies to be able to pick out little. So sometimes it worries me, because with Errand, we have to solve so many problems with ErrandLR.
Imagine my business partner still making a mistake with the name.
With ErrandLR, we still have to solve so many problems. Like, so it's almost like we have to solve almost all the problems, and but if we had to just focus on one problem, right, and another person had solved problem of sales and marketing, and that person has solved sales of HR and rider education and whatever. Do you understand? Like that. So like it would be a lot easier, So sometimes I always wonder, and I hope that okay, maybe if you successfully get to where I see you where you're driving us to in this car, maybe it might inspire, maybe it might serve as an inspiration to other people to say that if Jide can do this,
true. I mean,
maybe they can, and but that puts you two on the spot, because if you fail, everybody say, yeah, we want you.
Of course, but then I just believe like the only reason that will make me fail, it has to be from. It won't be that I'm not able to convince users to use my product. It has to be from maybe the government. It has to be something strong.
So something,
I won't stop my company because people did not use it. That means I'm still doing something wrong. So I need to figure out the solution.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, do I need to run promos to make sure that they use it and get used to it? I'll do that.
Yeah, because once you create value, people would use
exactly
it. That people value. Will use. Exactly. Once you create value, once something is valuable, once you create everything and you solve all the problems with the value chain, people will use it. There's no reason why not to.
Exactly.
Do you understand? There's no why everybody wants,
So it has to get to that point where, okay, this is, I can't go further with this. Like, I'm really blocked by this still, and maybe it's the government.
And maybe on the long run, another strategy is to get more people into like the local tech ecosystem. I'm just thinking in my head though, is maybe when you successfully pull this off, you can now even act as some form of like VC venture capitalist that will help other people get into the industry.
I mean,
because it's been a challenge.
Yeah, it has
from recruiting. It has been. Do you know how many challenges we face?
I think people are already doing it, but maybe they are also having challenges like Iyolu.
Everybody I see. I know those ones are OGs now. Those ones are OGs. Those ones have been. They've been around for a while. And they've done a lot of work. Those are the OGs. Those are the they've been but I still don't like to count them too much because it's fintech. It's fintech. Because say something like ErrandLR. ErrandLR came, and at the end of the day, it ended up being a charity company. Do you understand? They came up with a business model for a different style of education.
Yeah.
But if you look at what now Decagon is doing, something very similar.
Yeah.
Right? Decagon is doing something although they changed it, they took the business model a little bit. They remodeled it a little bit that okay, you pay. And I think Old School and some people are taking that educational business model that Decagon, that ErrandLR started with, and they're trying to run with it. But when you look at it and look at what happened with ErrandLR, you might put worry inside you like this nice business model, and Decagon and Old School now, they are new. We don't know if them two are going to.
They would have learned from Mandela's mistakes.
But still, I don't know the challenges they will be facing. So sometimes it's scary, like really dealing with Nigeria. Really dealing with Nigeria because, but let's be hopeful.
I mean, if ErrandLR eventually becomes successful, which I hope, it would be a good thing to just let people understand. Like, look, there are challenges in like every sector. You just need to be able to manage yourself, push through whatever challenge you face. There's always a solution. Yeah, there's always a solution.
You have to be very agile.
Exactly. Like when you see a problem coming, rub minds with people, talk to people, even if it's not your business partner. Talk to your mother, discuss with her, talk with someone, because one way or the other, there are smart people everywhere. It's probably from just talking to someone that the idea will just come to your head like, okay, what if I try this? And if you feel like that, you reiterate, like go to something else.
And you're right. And I feel like maybe that's even another mistake a lot of companies make. They are not agile. They get stuck at one problem. They are not able to quickly pivot. And so I think that's another thing that a lot of companies need to look into. That now, last question. So if I just finished secondary school today, maybe I'm year one ASU, I'm on strike, and somebody is telling me like, bro, forget university, go and learn how to code. do you think it's a good idea?
Yes, I mean, I definitely do that for my kid. I don't think my kid is even going to. If my kid is in Nigeria, I don't think my kid would go to university. I think university in Nigeria, hopefully the government will come and arrest me, is messed up. It, like, you know, I'm comparing to what I learned in university back then anyways. I don't know if the curriculum has changed. But back then, I pretty much wasted 5-6 years of my life learning bullshit. It was when I got out of school that I was like, oh my goodness, there is so much in the real world. In school, you only just read, and then they give you one computer to do one small practicing. Whatever I learned was useless. So I wouldn't take my child to a Nigerian university. I would just, tell the child, sit down. All right, you finished secondary school. Now it's time. I'll buy you a laptop, buy everything. I would train you myself, and then I'll put you in a school abroad, like learn online, and just from there kick off your career. So right now, I won't, if anybody has a child going to university, I'll tell them, just put them in a coding school. Even if it's not coding, put them in project management, put them in a different career path where they can learn things around tech. The future is around tech.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you're not doing rocket science, don't go to university.
Yeah.
If you're not trying to solve
exactly
cancer or anything like
yeah, exactly.
like don't go to university.
True, medical, all those things. Like just don't go to.
I think universities have been overly commercialized
in Nigeria.
Yes.
Let's use Nigeria, because if it's abroad, US university is because there you do the practicals, everything. Like when you come out,
their value.
Yeah.
But Nigeria, there's no value. There's practically.
I don't know about private schools though.
I went to private school now.
Okay, so it's so yeah. So I mean that's the sad truth. Like education is.